Welcome to Stars Matter, a recruiting podcast from The Athletic. I'm Mitch Light, joined by Ari Wasserman, National College Football reporter. Ari, back from vacation, went to Turks and Caicos last week, then went almost directly to Norman, Oklahoma. Your two favorite places, Ari. How you doing, buddy?
Yeah, I heard that you guys said that I wouldn't listen back to the episode last week, and got to say, you were right.
Very on brand. Also joined by Manny Navarro. Manny covers the University of Miami and recruiting for us in Florida and nationally. Manny had an interesting story on The Athletic yesterday on Michael Merdinger, an Israeli-born quarterback who recently committed to North Carolina. And we believe he is the first Israeli-born athlete who will play FBS football. Manny, how you doing today?
Doing great. I think this is all your product, Mitch. You're the one who did all the research. I guess we had an Israeli player at Youngstown State a couple years ago. Is that right?
Yes. So, assuming there has not been another one in FBS ranks, I think we would have heard about him. So, interesting story. We'll get into Michael in a little bit, and we like those fast rising quarterback stories, the guys who kind of off the radar, then show up late. So we'll talk about that. Also joined, of course, by Grace Rayner, our national recruiting writer. Grace had a good story on Friday. I remember you writing about these guys. I believe was in your in the Loomis Chafee School story about Jared and Jacob Smith, two of the top players in New England. One of the brothers is committed to Michigan. They're twins. Will the other one follow? Ari loves to talk about that, New England to Michigan pipeline. So we'll get into that. But Grace, how you doing today?
Doing well. Good to see you guys. Good. Welcome back, Ari.
Hey, so good to be back. Thanks, Grace.
Yeah. So good show. Like we said, got the entire crew back. We missed you last week, Ari. We're going to talk quarterback movement. Specifically, we're going to take a look at some of the ACC quarterbacks. Manny put a little chart together in his story on that. Some interesting, let's call them interesting quarterback commits. Not the most overwhelming so far. We're going to get Manny put in his mailbag that he thinks that Florida should sign a top 10 class every year. I didn't think it was that crazy or that bold. He seems to be getting some pushback on that. So we'll talk about that. We're going to hit the big commitments from the past week, and we will have mailbag and trivia. Let's dive right in there, Manny. You had your state of Florida recruiting mailbag last week. I guess someone asked you a question about Billy Napier, and Ari's talked a lot about him. And you made the assertion that you think they should have top 10 classes every year. And it seems reasonable to me. Was there a lot of pushback on that, Manny?
Well, I just think there were a lot of people who kind of wanted me to give Billy Napier a ton of credit for the start that they've gotten off to, which he deserves. I mean, they've got 4 top 50 recruits. But I'm just of the opinion that if you're in a state like Florida and you are an SEC team with 3 national titles to your name, you're just doing your job if you're a top 10 program every single year. Like, there's no excuse. I mean, it's the same thing for Texas, right? Like, if Texas isn't in the top 10 in recruiting every year, being a national championship winning program there, and now going to be in the SEC next year, I don't know if that coach is doing their job if they're outside the top 10. It's the same thing at USC. Out there in California, so much talent, one of the top 4 states for talent every single year. Same thing with Georgia. So to me, I think the Florida fans who kind of just want me to, praise Billy Napier for doing his job, it kind of drives me crazy. He's doing a better job than the previous guy, but I just think this is what he should be doing.
You know what the hardest part about that whole thing is that there are probably 15 to 20 schools that should be recruiting at a top 10 level. Right. And you're right about all 20. And there's going to be ebbs and flows of when that goes on. It's I think you could actually make the case, and this is going to sound nuts, but if you remove Nick Saban from the Alabama equation, I'm not sure that Alabama would be in that scenario, right? But you look about geography and history and all the things that kind of go into that, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. But don't you think you could kind of make that same case for every single of the big 3 in Florida? I think Miami should be recruiting at a top 10 clip. I think Florida State should be, and I think Florida should be. I also think USC should be, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas. There are a lot of them that just inherently have access to players where it's even if you're just doing the fundamental basics of your job would result in that. Now, the hardest part more than anything is recruiting nationally has changed that. it's a lot different to get to the top 10, and you have coaches at some places that don't even view that as the standard, and that's what drives me nuts. Like, if you try to pin a coach down and say, do you think you should have a top 10 class, and they go on a rant about how getting the right fit's more important, like, I want to bang my head against the wall. And it happened to me yesterday. Like, it happens all the time. And it's like, if I just feel like if I were a Power 5 coach, I'd be like, this is one of the top 5-10 programs in America. We win national championships here. Of course, we're going to be in the top 10.
Yeah, I didn't want to contradict myself because I was agreeing with Manny. It's like, of course, Florida should be in the top 10. But we recently did that story where we all ranked the Power 5 programs by recruiting potential. And I don't want to look back and sit here and say I had Florida 12. Like, I don't remember where I had them. I don't think we had Florida in the top 10 as a group. I don't know if one of you guys want to look that up while we're all talking here.
I'm going to look it up because I think it's an interesting tool. Yeah.
But great. Clemson, like, historically, Clemson has not been a top 10 recruiter. They were for a stretch there. They won some titles. It's not, I mean, they have access to talent because it's near North Carolina. It's near, obviously, Atlanta. They go into Florida. But I think Clemson's one of those programs where you can argue it could be or argue it shouldn't be. And I'm sure, it's a discussion among Clemson fans about their ability or maybe their lack of ability to recruit an elite level in recent years.
Yeah, and I think that's what's frustrating if you're a Florida fan and you're looking, maybe not this year, but in years past, you're seeing a school like Clemson figure it out coming into your state and taking a lot of your kids. But yeah, I mean, I just think there's certain programs that, like Ari was saying, should just naturally be in the top 10. I don't know that I'd put Clemson in that, but they figured out how to do it.
Well, just going off of your research previously, Mitch, Florida's only been in the top 10 twice since 2015.
That's crazy.
2019 and 2020. Outside of that, they were 14th, 17th, 14th, 11th, 12th, and 21st. So,
yeah, they haven't even come close to comparing to what they were in the mid to early 2000s, right?
Right.
Yeah. How much is this? Like a lot of it. You brought up something that we've talked about, Ari, about recruiting nationally. And I'm just kind of thinking out loud here. Urban Meyer was an elite recruiter, so maybe that's not fair because he's recruited elite everywhere. But like now that everything's more national, it's like those kids in Florida. Look, we made a lot of this. Alabama has been living in Florida, especially South Florida, so there's fewer kids for the 3 Florida schools to get. So, there's like a happy medium between Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen, probably in recruiting. I'm just curious to see, like, I would have been interested to see like how maybe someone not quite as good as Urban Meyer, but maybe more invested than Dan Mullen recruiting did when could they have warded off some of that Alabama?
Well,
invasion?
now that we're like really having a discussion about this, if we could go back and re-rank them, I might change it because I feel like, with the Clemson example, it's like how much winning does Dabo Swinney have to do at Clemson before Clemson becomes bigger than its coach? Alabama has had a historical program. Maybe they're past that and they should be in the top 10 regardless of Nick Saban's presence. But which programs in college football should be recruiting top 10 classes if you could separate the head coach and replace them with somebody else? Because there's the current status and there is what that program is. And like, Florida with Urban Meyer signed the greatest class of all time in 2010, and they were recruiting crazily, the year or two after it. But historically speaking, is Florida a program that is signed or should sign top 10 classes on autopilot when they don't have one of the best recruiters of the modern history as their head coach? And Manny, you would probably know the answer to that better than I would. I don't think that's the case. So like that's devil's advocate. And it's like there are certain places, like it's like Texas is built to sign top 10 classes regardless of who their coach is. Right. Who else would fall in that category? USC probably just based on location.
Ohio State.
I would say USC and Georgia. I mean, the amount of talent Georgia every single year. And I could honestly say Alabama. I mean, Alabama's kind of crept into that top 5, top 6 every single year in terms of just blue chip players. So, I mean, I
think that Nick Saban has probably done enough at Bama to separate Saban from Bama, and like that program withstands the test of time now, whereas when he retires, we have the same expectations for that program than we do now, maybe, which is probably the most amazingly incredible accomplishment any coach could have. If you separate national championships to personal accomplishments away from it, and then the program is a different program when you leave, like that is the ultimate achievement, I think. So, but I don't know if Florida has that. And maybe the real answer of who should be signing top 10 classes shouldn't be 20 schools. Maybe it should really only be 5 or 4 who just do it on autopilot, no matter who it is. Like, I don't know what would have to happen at Ohio State for them not to sign a top 10 class every year. You know, they've been outside of the top 10 once, I think, in my adult life. And it was just because of a coaching transition and it was a smaller class. But like Georgia should be autopilot because of how many kids are in Georgia. Right. Texas is on autopilot because it is in Texas and there are 100 top 300 players like basically in the state. It feels like USC's in Southern California and has carte blanche. Like, I don't know if I would put any other like Clemson.
Yeah, you pushed back on me when I had Texas when we did those rankings. I had Texas.
Yeah, no, you were probably
like, how
right.
could you put Texas 3? I was like, because they just signed the number 3 class. With the coach who won 8 games or 4 games.
And like that's the thing too of like this whole profession. It's like when you have an opinion about something, if somebody presents something that changes your opinion, and I believe that this conversation kind of has, you know, I can admit that being wrong. I was probably wrong about that, right? But like A&M is probably a program that anticipates or expects to sign top 10 classes, but I don't think they can do it on autopilot. Like, who are the top 10 autopilot recruiting schools that there are? I think that is probably just as interesting as like ranking the current infrastructure of who's where.
By the way, just for factual purposes, Texas has only been outside the top 10 twice since 2015.
There you go. Through multiple coaches, turmoil.
Yeah.
So Grace, when did
class size? Size.
When did you start covering Clemson? I know I've asked you this 100 times.
My first full season was 2017.
So when did they win the first national championship?
Like 2 months before I started.
Okay, so you weren't around the fan base when they hadn't won a title since '81.
So like it was like my 3rd game on the beat. So
okay, I'm just curious, like, you know, you've got certain programs that like sort of like Georgia until they won it. What, it had been like 40 years. Like, are we ever going to win it? Like, was there that angst around Clemson, or were they a program that just hoped to be good, but maybe not national championship good? And it's amazing what how your expectations change when you win a couple titles and you want to win it every year.
Yeah, I think they went from, Dabo threw a pizza party, sort of America's underdog, slaying big bad Alabama. At that point, I think Clemson fans were just sort of along for the ride and just loving life. Now I think that there's a little bit of angst just because they know what can be accomplished. And obviously they're at a really interesting point right now. But yeah, to your point, Mitch, it is interesting how, like in Clemson's case, literally 2 years changed the entire trajectory of the expectations under Dabo Swinney.
Yeah. So I want to transition. This is sort of Florida. Well, it's specific to Florida. Jeremiah Smith, the guy we've talked a lot about on this podcast, top 5 national player, I think number 2 from Hollywood Chaminade, who's been committed to Ohio State. And, you hear this a lot by all accounts. He's like not just a top 5 player. He's like some people comparing him to some of the best wide receiver prospects the last 10, 15 years. Goes to Florida, or is going to Florida, Manny, on an official visit, or whatever.
Yeah,
he's going to Gainesville there. So I know there's been a lot of
with Lagway.
Yeah. There's been a lot of angst about Miami, hopefully trying to get involved there. What do you make of this visit? Is this just going to check out Gainesville? I mean, is he going to percent chance he signs at Ohio State? I say 90.
I would say 95%.
Okay.
I think this is more of a 5-star flex, meaning I can go basically and visit wherever I want, whenever I want, because I'm a 5-star and one of the best players.
Not if you're committed to Brent Venables, right, Ari? We're going to get into that.
Sweetie.
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
It's an Ohio State 5-star flex. These guys will take visits. And Jeremiah, look, he's pretty honest about it with me. He said he's going to look to see how Miami does this year. If they have any sort of a pulse on offense and play better than they did a year ago, he'd give them a consideration. And the Hurricanes, by the way, offered his younger brother, I think, yesterday. So his brother's going to be a freshman. They're trying to make this a family thing, pull out all the stops. But yes, he'll visit Gainesville. I just don't think it's serious.
Gotcha. All right, Ari, transitioning to your visit. Was it an official visit to Oklahoma? Were you like, did we allow this visit, or was it unofficial? I don't know. If you cleared it.
Expense report to get approved. I don't know if
we don't cover your gambling losses. Okay.
Yeah. Well, If you did, I'd be a much happier person right now. My hotel was $88 last night.
Okay,
I
good
take
job.
great pride. I take great pride in that.
The one in Turks and Caicos or in Norman?
No, the one in Turks and Caicos,
was not $88.
It was add a few digits to that one.
Okay.
But
so you went up to spend some time with Brent Venables. He's a guy that did not have a great first year on the field, had a great first year on the recruiting trail, and you kind of went up there and let's talk recruiting. How I was just
like spewing all my Stars Matter takes in this guy's face. Like, I'm surprised he let me come up there to do this. I was like, I asked him my favorite stat. Said, who are the 3 programs that have won a national championship since the inception of recruiting rankings that didn't sign a top 5 class?
Did he know?
Well, yeah, he was part of 2 of them. Yeah. At Clemson, he didn't get the 3rd one. He thought Oklahoma was the 3rd one, but it was Auburn. And then I was talking to him about the concentration of elite talent at some of the other places, because he's very passionate about getting the right fits and the loyal kids and the people who will come to Oklahoma and lovingly get into the back of the line, no special treatment. And like, I love all that like coaching thought, like if we're all in this together, nurture the kids, get guys who know it's going to be hard, don't commit unless you're ready to commit, and like have that type of culture at Oklahoma. I think that's going to be great. But I just bluntly asked him, I said, that all sounds good. Like Rudy was a good movie, but I'm wondering, if you don't sign top 5 classes, can you beat a team that has 9 5-stars a year coming in? And like that to me is the crux of the Oklahoma situation. So the thing that I like about he relented and he said you have to have a certain caliber of talent because it's a fact and you can't deny that. Now he always talks about a lot of the 3-star guys that went on to do some pretty good things at Clemson as like the benchmark of the types of guys that they want to bring to Oklahoma. The guys who guard the locker room when they want to leave, in the portal, those types of, weren't highly rated, but he kind of went down like this list of intangibles and commitment and work ethic and all the things that you want, like in that 3-star heart. And he goes like a guy like Jackson Arnold. I'm like, yeah. I mean, if he has those things and he's that person, then with that rating, that's exactly what you want. So I'm trying to like write a story about like, how Brent Venables is trying to sign elite level classes that compare to the elite other classes, while also maintaining those tent poles of the things that he wants to do, and how like that's more of a treasure hunt than throwing offers out the window and hoping you get a bunch of people to bite. So yeah, it was a really good visit. His office is insanely pretty. It's got like kind of like a cathedral feel to it. Like it's
Isn't there been Ryan Days?
Yeah. No, this was like had a Yellowstone feel to it,
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't know how it was in the stadium. So I parked right in front of the stadium and I walked up and yeah, he was very warm. He gave me an hour. We had a really good conversation. And like, I just don't think coaches, the one thing that I left thinking of is all the statistics that we talk about, guys, like, when's the last time a team that didn't sign a top 5 class won a title, and how many top 100 players went to your school, and all the stuff that like is important on spreadsheets and on paper. And I think ultimately in determining the national champion, coaches don't think in those terms. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. Like, would you want your coach to be obsessed with it the way that we are? Or do you want your coach to try to assemble the team that has the most rah locker room positive vibe type thing going?
I think there's a happy medium. I don't think they're looking for the guys they think are the best players, and most of them honestly don't care if the guy's ranked 412 or 110 like we do. We say, well, that's a great get,
because it's an indication of how good the player
is. But not in a recruiting services opinion. I'm not arguing the Stars Matter mantra. I'm just saying the coaches are more concerned with their own evaluation. So if Brent Venables thinks he has the best players, he doesn't care what they're ranked.
Yeah, but I think that's probably that's true for everybody.
Right, that's what I'm saying. You just said coaches don't think like we do, so I was kind of agreeing with you. And
well, they don't think. So here's the thing about that whole thing: top 100 players. Like, if I were a head coach of a college football program, I would be obsessed with that stat. Like, I would care about that.
Agree.
Because the top 100 players in the country are usually unequivocally the best players. Now, there are people in the 300s, 400s, 500s that turn out to be really good. But if you are bringing in 18 top 100 players, if your rival's bringing in 18 top 100 players, and you're bringing in 4, I don't care how good you feel about your evaluations. That would keep me up at night. So I think there has to be a thought process of how do we stack up statistically against these guys. And it's like, I don't care how good Brett Venables thinks about, his team. They athletically cannot match up with Georgia based on those rankings that are subjective, in my opinion. So it's like kind of like the whole thing with Oklahoma is not just getting back to the playoff and winning the Big 12. It's how the hell do you beat Georgia when you play them? Because they couldn't do that under Lincoln either.
That was going to be my question to you, Ari. How much did you guys talk about the move to the SEC and what that's going to be like? I'm sure you're going to write about it.
Well, I listened to a lot of Venables interviews before I went there, just to like
research.
I was proud of you, buddy. I was flipping between the serial killer in Oregon and Venables, back and forth on my podcasts. But
both very interesting.
But I noticed that every single question that man has taken in the last year has to do with the SEC. And every single time it's brought up, he says the same thing. So I didn't waste my time on it. Like I felt like, the answer there is we have to do everything to get better inside this building. This is what matters. Like, he's not going to sit there and be like, holy shit, we have to play Alabama instead of TCU in 2 years. Like, everyone knows the score there, and I'll be able to write about it. But I didn't bluntly ask him, like, how do you feel about that? Because, like, if you can't win the Big 12, bud, like, that's the whole thing. It's like, you're not going to be winning that conference either. So, but the thing I want to say about Oklahoma is that, like, I love the class that they put together last year. They got a lot of really good defensive players, and they were able to continue the tradition of getting an elite level quarterback. And I think it's possible that by the time this is all said and done, Jackson Arnold will be the best of the ones that signed last year. And it will be kind of funny to watch if that happens. Like, the Jackson Arnold quiet commitment that happened in the background, like, outshines Arch Manning on the field in 3 years.
That's Grace's boy.
That's definitely within the realm of possibility. But, like, you have a man that has a lot of conviction and belief in what he's doing and that he's doing it the right way. And it's worked at Clemson. It's worked at Kansas State in previous stops. And, like, I don't know if I'm just the most gullible person on the face of the earth, but when I go visit these coaches and I spend time in their office, like, I sometimes feel like I'm, like, convinced of things. And I thought he did a pretty good job of that.
Well, I'm going to transition to that because I always talk about how every time I read one of you guys writes a story about a 3-star quarterback, I think he's going to be the next best find. And the latest one was yesterday from Manny, which we talked briefly before, but Michael Merdinger, 3-star from Cardinal Gibbons in Fort Lauderdale, and we talked different varying degrees of 3 stars. He's a low 3-star right now. I'm sure he'll be reevaluated at some point, but number 1286 has only started 6 games in high school. Yet North Carolina, a school that has recruited the quarterback position very well, you could say that's been a team strength for like 4 or 5 straight years. And, there's not a ton of quarterbacks on the board, but Manny, they go down there, and I know there's some the style of offense they like, but you visited him a couple days ago and just talk a little about what type of kid he is and what North Carolina is getting.
Yeah, it's not often that a Power 5 program like North Carolina, who's, like you said, had a lot of quarterback success, will take a guy who's got 6 career starts under his belt between his first high school and his second. And last year he was basically the backup, started 1 game for his team, but he runs the air raid system and he's really adept at it. He's really smart, great, 5.1 GPA, super bright kid. I was watching him throw the ball yesterday. He's got the arm, he's got the quick release. So, Chip Lindsey's the new OC over there. We talked about North Carolina a lot last week, right, Grace? And the changes since Phil Longo left. And, it's going to be more air raid than what Longo ran the last couple years, in the sense where maybe you don't need, a mobile quarterback. You just need some really good receivers and a quarterback who can get the ball out quickly. And watching Mike, kind of run his team yesterday, he had command of it. He was yelling and screaming at guys through a spring practice, and they were listening to him. So I think, Chip Lindsey ultimately found a guy that they really like. And one of the more interesting comments I got out of yesterday was talking to somebody who, works with a lot of kids, takes them on visits around the country. And I asked about Jaden Davis. I said, North Carolina had Jaden Davis in their backyard, obviously didn't end up with him. He's going to Michigan. And one of the responses I got was, well, Jaden Davis really isn't that good. He's overhyped for a 5-star, which kind of made me like, kind of like, what? You serious? So I don't know. I mean, that was the opinion. Maybe that's what the kind of message North Carolina wants out there, because we did bring up the question, why wasn't North Carolina even in it, right, for Jaden Davis? I don't know.
So what I'm hearing is Michael Merdinger is better than Jaden Davis. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's the message they were
Grace,
trying
is that
to
what
give me
your
yesterday.
UNC sources are saying?
Yeah, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
But I did hear that yesterday.
I'd go play quarterback in North Carolina.
You could, Ari. You could do it. Just
I bet
rid of
so,
the ball
yeah.
quickly.
Yeah, I got a lot of things I got to work on before that's an option. But I'm excited. Like I have a lot of like crazy football takes about the coming year.
Well, good thing you're on like 5 podcasts a day.
But like I haven't said this one.
Ooh.
And I'm afraid to say it because I don't know
Come
if
on,
it's
we're
actually
all
true.
friends here. We're all friends here.
I think Drake Maye is going to be a better quarterback in the pros than Caleb Williams.
Whoa,
I told you, Drake Maye's
I think I agree with you, Ari.
He is awesome. Like I don't know, like
the second best quarterback I think I've ever seen in person in college.
Like, Caleb Williams is insanely good. Like it is, but he plays in a way that's more exciting. And I think that the exciting nature and the brand that he plays at really kind of plays into his like persona. And like, I'm not saying he's not going to be a Pro Bowler, or, whatever, and he's going to be the number 1 overall pick in the draft. But like, mark my words, like if they play similarly to the way that they played last year, those two, there's got to be a debate, right, about who the number 1 overall pick is next year. Or is it just going to be Caleb Williams and that's it? Like that might be the case.
I think there's plenty of Drake Maye buzz. I mean, I think it started last year, obviously. Yeah.
Like Drake Maye is like outside of the top 5, I think, in Heisman.
Didn't they lose?
Right now?
I mean, lost downs. I don't know what the receiver situation is. They might not be as good skill positions this year. They might be.
Yeah.
I don't.
Caleb Downs was a third round pick, I think, and that
Caleb
blows
Downs.
me
No,
away.
you mean Josh.
Josh Downs.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but he was great in college.
Anybody who watched North Carolina play, and I watched a lot of North Carolina last year.
I wonder why.
Way more than I wish I would have. But that dude could not be covered. That dude was so good. That and I get that he's a smaller slot receiver type player, but like God, he was awesome. But Drake Maye has size. He's got arm strength. He's got I don't want to use the word moxie, but he's got the the it factor there, and like he can run really well too. Like I think I'm very curious to see how that's going to play out next year, because I think everybody just assumes that Caleb is going to win the Heisman and be the number 1 overall pick again.
Yeah, I think that's one that certainly Nick Saban wishes he would have been able to keep him. I mean, obviously, he had Bryce Young, but that's one of those guys that I think obviously would have been great to pass the torch to.
Could you imagine if he was on Alabama's roster, would they just be national champions already?
Maybe. I have to play the games, but yes. Yeah. I mean,
Mitch.
Don't have to play the games. Just look at the roster.
Just stop saying coaching cliches. It's a podcast. They still have to play the games.
Every series, one day at a time.
As long as they're all working to get better, one day at a time. God.
Speaking of anything, but Manny in his story had a chart of North Carolina of ACC quarterback commits so far. There are 8 commits in the class of 2024. They are the number 10 quarterback, number 16 quarterback, number 29, 34, 39, 46, 61, 83. Not overwhelming, Manny. Is that fair?
Yeah, especially the way that we were talking about quarterbacks in the ACC last year, right? Like we were talking about, this is going to be one of the best conferences, all these great quarterbacks, and then I think half of them ended up transferring into schools at the end of last season. So, I think obviously not a banner year for quarterback recruiting in the conference, but I will say I do like Kromenhoek, who's going to Florida State, who's a top 10 guy. I think
he's the top guy in the class.
Yeah,
I mean in the conference right now.
So kind of projects.
Yeah. So you've written about 3 guys so far: Kromenhoek, Judd Anderson. Not in depth about Judd Anderson and Merdinger. So a couple of those: Jakari Williams, number 16 quarterback, I believe, to Georgia Tech. Davy Belford, number 29, to Virginia Tech. Cedric Bailey from South Florida, number 34, going to NC State. Deuce Adams, number 39, going to Louisville. Jeremy Hecklinski. Grace, you wrote about him, right?
I think, we mentioned him. Yep.
Yeah, 46 going to Wake Forest, and then Judd Anderson, 61, going to Miami, and then Michael Merdinger, number 83, going to North Carolina.
Tell you.
Yeah, tell us.
Michael Merdinger does not sound like an Israeli name. Like that's like, what are we? my mom's Israeli. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is like I am half Israeli, and like I've got the name. I mean, Ari.
Ari, yeah.
Like, come on, like look at my name. Michael Merdinger sounds like a guy whose dad like was a 40-year employee at a
Ari
power
Wasserman
plant in Illinois or something.
You should
like
switch names with this kid. He could be Ari Wasserman.
I should be Michael Merdinger.
Yeah. Can we call you Dinger?
Yeah, it's not like, honestly, if there were like 9,000 names or like 9 names on the board, and they're like, pick the Israeli, I would not pick Michael Merdinger.
Yes. I was gonna say maybe we could do something like that, but probably
there's no Chaim out there, or like there's no.
Yeah. Grace, you wrote last week about kind of jumping on the Michigan bandwagon. Still the number 1 class. 2 twins. I don't need to say 2 twins. Who've been bouncing around the Connecticut boarding schools, and one is going to Michigan. One is not yet announced. What are the chances they're going to be together, Grace? 80, 90%?
I think it's high. Gerard is the one who has committed to Michigan. He's the lower ranked one of the 2.
But both like top 300 guys, right?
Yeah, both 4 stars. Gerard plays D-line. So I think he projects as a tackle. Jacob is a defensive end. But yeah, Jacob's got some official visits set up. He's going to Michigan's getting his first one, and then he's supposed to go to Kentucky and Nebraska. But Gerard was like, "Yeah, in ideal world, he goes to Michigan and cancels them." So I don't know. I'm curious though, because originally the plan was for them to sort of commit together, and so this package duo thing was kind of where this was trending about a year ago, and now obviously one is committed and one hasn't. I don't know if that was to go ahead and secure a spot, or now they'll both get to have their own moment. But if I was a betting person, aka if I was Ari, I would bet that he joins him at Michigan.
Now, if you were Grace,
you imagine being a twin and then not going to college with your twin?
That's what I was going to say. Like, if I had twins and they went to different schools, I'd be kind of pissed. Like,
if you're their parents,
yeah, it'd be annoying. Like trying to go to the games.
We were rooting for twins the first time around.
Nightmare.
I think it just happened.
But it would have been great.
It just happened this past year in Florida. There were well, not my twins. I don't have any twins, thankfully. That would have been a nightmare having 2 kids at once for me, anyway. But
what's harder though, Manny? Raising 2 at the same time or going through pregnancy twice?
No, I'm telling you, twins. I have good friends.
It's easy for you to say because you're a man.
That's
true. We had when Zoe was like 2 or 3. One of our friends from college had twins, and my wife Heather and another friend went down to help them out for the weekend and came back and just horrified. Like, you could not imagine how difficult it is to have twins.
But the days when you have a newborn are awful anyway. So like,
but it's
how
like
much worse could it be? Like
more than twice as hard. I mean, I want anyone that have twins out there, please let us know, but it's more than twice as hard.
I'm not saying that it's not harder. I'm saying those days suck anyway. Right. So you might as well get the whole thing out of the way then, so you don't have to go through pregnancy and have twice as many days where you don't sleep.
But I like having kids different ages too. So,
by the way, yes, I like having them apart, 4 years apart.
Yeah,
there's no question. But there were twin brothers, I think, who went to 2 different schools from Florida last year. Michael Harris and his brother Andrew. I think UCF, Andrew ended up UCF in Maryland. Yeah, so
were they fraternal twins?
I'm not sure,
because identical twins have to go to the same place.
They're Siamese twins.
They're Siamese twins. They are a defensive tackle.
Yes, rush ends. Alrighty then. Did you guys read Audrey Snyder's story? Ari, did you have a chance to read that yet on the Ethan Grunkenmeyer, the quarterback from your old stomping grounds at Olentangy High? Do you know where that is, Ari?
Olentangy.
I botched that. 15 minutes north.
Like Ohio quarterback.
Yeah, so it's like Drew Aller part 2, but without the 5-star status yet. But although Drew Aller wasn't a 5-star at this point.
Yeah.
Basically, as a kid, Audrey talked to him. He was at the whiteout game that Penn State won as an Ohio State fan with his parents, sitting up way up in the rafter or the corner in the end zone. So he was all pissed they lost. Now he's an emerging quarterback, had a bunch of MAC offers. More Power 5s are coming in. He's going to Penn State. I believe yesterday he was at Penn State. My guess is he joins that class there. But Ryan Day's son is going to be a freshman at that high school next year. He's a quarterback too. So a lot of Ohio State ties. Obviously, they have their quarterback in Aaron Nolan. but just this, and he trains with the same quarterback coach as Drew Aller. So just crazy similarities there.
Yeah, the thing that'll be interesting is, and I always he's a 2024 kid, so the thing that always happens when this happens is that Ohio State recruits somebody nationally, and then, oh, okay, this kid goes to the Elite 11 or something, and then becomes a 5-star. It's like they're left holding the bag, and it's like that to me. And I wrote this about Aller from the Elite 11 2 years ago. Like, that is proficient recruiting. Like, if if Aaron Nolan didn't exist and this kid was a 5-star in Ohio, like, Ohio State would get him 10 times out of 10 times probably, but kind of, using that to get in there and then end up with an asset like that is critical. And that's kind of what I view a recruiting staff of. Like, they need to have meetings about, like, hey, here's an opening here. Let's take that opening and try to make something out of it. Let's use every opportunity that we can to put together a great class. And, that's, to me, that's great. Now, I don't know if his story is going to wind up the same way. I mean, he's 6'2", isn't he? 6'2",
it's big kid. I think he's
200
big kid.
pounds. So, the size, he passes the test there, and who knows? Maybe I'll see him in California in June, and the next thing you know, we're doing the same thing again. But yeah, I love when that happens.
Yeah, he's going to the Elite 11 regional camp at State College in a couple weeks there. So we'll see. So betting's been a hot topic lately in collegiate sports. Ari, I know you followed it while you were gone, but a huge story broke about the Alabama baseball coach and some other schools involved. And Ari, I believe you're allowed to bet on the NFL draft. Is that true?
Yeah. Yes. Really good at it. Thank you for asking.
Yes. So what if you could bet on where 5-star college kids went?
That would be sick.
Do you think they would open up for any improprieties?
Dude, me and Will Fong would be living on an island somewhere because I'd be paying rent and he'd be giving me the plays. Like, I don't know. Could you imagine, like, if the betting lines came off the board every time a crystal ball came in?
Or like, Jeremiah Smith. It's like, what are the odds he's going to end up at, like,
Yeah,
Miami?
it would be like Ohio State minus 1,500.
Yeah.
Florida plus 450 and Miami plus 450. And, like, you would just, like,
no scandal. We wouldn't see any scandals or anything.
No, what could possibly go wrong?
Yes. So just thought that
would be kind of fun.
It's a betting market. You might.
I bet on badminton once.
How'd that come?
Just once? That surprises me.
Have you been on pickleball
this week? It was a really, really rough week for me. It wasn't going well for me.
Can you?
No, but it's the sport of the future, so I don't want to get left behind.
Could you bet in Turks and Caicos?
Yeah,
I guess you can bet anywhere.
Casinos. My wife, oh my God, I love her so much. She made dinner reservations to the places that were closest to the casino. Can you believe that? Can you believe how lucky I am?
That is love.
We went to dinner. We got this nice dinner, and drank a little bit, and then we walked from the restaurant. And she played blackjack next to me, and whoo, I'm falling all over there all over again.
It was your honeymoon, right?
Yeah,
basically,
it was our 1-year anniversary and our honeymoon.
Yeah,
I guess whatever you want to call it. I don't know,
because you went to your honeymoon last year. You saw us basically.
You were my honeymoon last year.
Yeah,
in Landis.
Yeah, I know. I remember that.
Actually, that was our 1-year anniversary trip, and Chicago's my honeymoon with you guys.
Okay, good. Looking forward to seeing you. Some 20
casino.
Where's the closest casino? I'm not a big.
There's one like right on the corner there in Gary, Indiana. Are you kidding me?
I did look on the map. I think our hotel is right across the street from the original Hooters. Ari, did you notice that?
Oh, I'd rather gamble.
Okay, I know. 2024 commits. Texas A&M earlier this week. Jordan Pride, a safety from Blountstown, Florida, previously committed to FSU. Manny, I don't remember that decommitment. Do you remember what the deal was there? Was there a deal with the decommitment?
He was one of their first commitments as far as when the new coaching staff took over, and I don't know the details of why ultimately they had a breakup, but I don't ever believe in long-term commitments on the recruiting trail. Very rarely do we see somebody carry a marriage from their sophomore year all the way through their senior year of high school.
Ari had a long-term commitment, and now he's happily married. There you go. So it can happen.
My commitment wasn't that long.
You guys didn't live – well, you lived apart.
We were only together in person for a year before we got engaged.
Yeah, so
like long distance was like 6 months or a year, and it was like during
long
COVID.
Distance.
We had a very
I'm talking about football. I'm not trying to worry Grace here with my comments.
Talk to Brent Venables about recruiting for 10 minutes, and there's a big conflation between relationship.
Yes.
I'm still kind of trying to decipher the difference between those two things.
Yeah.
He used the word cheating on like 9 times. So
really, wow.
Washington gets an interior offensive lineman, Paki Finau, from Hesperia, California. I'm sure I botched the town name and his name. Sorry.
My favorite segment of this podcast is you reading off random names you've never heard before.
Yes.
In like towns and just doing your best.
Well, here's an easy one.
You're probably hitting 30%.
There's some big ones today.
Here's an easy one. Tennessee, Kellen Lindstrom, a defensive lineman, top 250 kid from Springfield, Missouri. There you go.
Good job. Yeah.
Florida, Isaiah Williams, even though I spelled it wrong, wide receiver, number 325 from Tampa. Then Oregon. You want to take this one? Oh, no, you don't know how to look at the document. You don't have it open.
No, I don't look at your documents.
By now, I can tell. Iffy.
How can you tell?
Because I can see the Google Doc. I can see who's looked at it when. Everyone is
I
on
thought
this.
That was an implication that you think that like I'm not good at this.
No, but I can say it's like Grace
sure.
yesterday, Manny yesterday, Mike Zimmerman yesterday, Ari August of 2022.
On an island in the Caribbean.
It's been a year and a half since you looked at the document.
So here's the thing that I want to say about this real quick. You are my editor/superior, right?
In theory, yes.
Right?
Yes.
You know what my skill set is.
I know.
You know what I have a hard time with. So why do you keep designing it for me to fail? Like, fucking help me here. Like, what are we doing? Like, no, just text it to me. Like, I don't do.
You
good
do fine without looking at it. If it was a problem, I would say
no. I know, but but like I'm not good at those things. So we gotta like set up a system of things that I'm good at. Like it's a personality flaw. I don't know how many times I can say sorry. Like
Mike Zimmerman says it's pinned in the channel. We have a Stars Matter Slack channel.
You know how far you have to scroll for that? I don't have the
that's the purpose.
That's the point of pinning it.
It's at the top.
So yesterday,
that's cool. Now I've never seen that till right now. That's cool. Okay, I'll look at it.
A couple days ago, I was taking my daughter.
I'm in the document.
To the doctor. I called Ari, so he's on the phone, and he's just can't find anything, can't do this. I hang up, and Zoe said, he's like having another kid, isn't he?
Or like two other
we don't
kids.
know. Here's the thing
but I love you just as much.
If you want to get like a breakdown of the way stuff works, I had to ask Max Olson to forward me the instructions on one of the projects we're working on, so I didn't get you mad at me.
I don't get mad at you, Ari.
But like I have to like avoid this discussion. So I just like I didn't know where to find the recruiting revisited instructions.
I would have sent it to you.
That's why we went Max to leave you alone.
I'm hurt. I'm hurt.
So
Ari.
Just be careful with these comments. It hurts my feelings.
Okay, 2025. This is a big one. Commitment. Anquan Fagan's number 5-star safety, number 21 from Thompson High School in Alabaster, Alabama, which is kind of emerging as a pipeline, not a pipeline because the guys are going everywhere, but great high school, great talent producer. To USC, talk about USC needing to bolster their defense. I'm sure they'd prefer to be a 2024 kid. He's joining his brother, Taekwon, as a 4-star cornerback in the class of 2022 who played 1 year at Alabama there. So good get for USC. I looked was just poking around the other day, and it's not a huge sample size, but the 4 new Power 5 programs, you think, hey, you're going to Big 12. How much of a boost has this been recruiting? I guess you could argue they probably started getting the boost last year because they knew about the move and they could already sell it on the trail. But Cincinnati, this is to me is one of you guys should write a story on Scott Satterfield's recruiting, because like underwhelming hire, right? Like on the face of it, and they're right now. It's early. They have the number 20 class after last year, number 74. Again, a lot of that's transition class and low numbers and stuff. Their average player rating isn't necessarily much better than last year, but you think how much Luke Fickell raised the profile of that school recruiting. The fact that Satterfield's off to a really good start, I don't know, guys. I'm a little surprised. What do you guys think?
I mean, look, Cincinnati. When you look at the success they had making a playoff and everything else, like I guess we shouldn't be surprised anymore. They're one of the better programs, and going to the Big 12 now. They're going to have their Power 5 school. Like, yes, it's impressive, but at the same time, I think it's just a result of all the success that they've had, and they'll continue that upward climb. I would say of all the teams joining the Big 12, I would think Cincinnati would be best equipped to win right away.
If you look at all of the Cincinnati's past coaches, How many of them weren't successful?
Except Tommy Tuberville. Basically,
he's doing some politics now, right?
Yes, that's my example of a program. Like I always say this when I was at Athlon and we talk about like programs that win over multiple head coaches. That's when you got a program. Won? Yeah, Baylor. It's
Houston's one.
It's not. Well, Houston's had its ups and downs. Not every coach has been good there, but basically every Cincinnati coach, and Tuberville wasn't awful, but that's why I like Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's a school that we've talked about. I think has everything in place to win big, but really only one coach has won there. So, and again, he was there for 25 years.
But it's an interesting case study, though, Mitch, on the schools that are built like that have success over the long term through multiple coaches, and then when those coaches leave, when they go on and stink, like what does that mean for the program? Like it's like hiring a Houston coach to come take over your program is kind of a scary proposition because there's been people who have been successful there who have gone on to bigger jobs and they've all not done very well, right? Who like Kevin Sumlin, I guess, did okay.
Tom Herman.
Because Tom Herman got fired. And Tom Herman to Texas was the biggest, like you remember when that happened, how big of a slam dunk that was?
Yeah.
That was like, can't miss, no doubt about it, hire. And it didn't work.
It's like that more so in college basketball. It's like the programs that just are like Murray State's always good. So like if you're a coach at Murray State doesn't mean you're not a great coach, but it's like everyone's successful there. So it's the same principle.
But what is it about the University of Cincinnati that makes but like Brian Kelly went on and had a really good career.
Right.
So I'm not saying Cincinnati's
Butch
like
Jones,
what is it about these places that cultivate a winning experience regardless of who the coach is? That's what's fascinating to me.
I mean, institutional support, I'm sure for the size school, it's good fan base, geography, as you know.
UCF is one too, kind of, right?
I would say outside of Ohio State, who in that region that maybe recruits against Cincinnati is a national champion? I mean, it's a little different, right, than being in Florida where you've got 3 teams that have won national titles. You've got Georgia next door. You've got Alabama nearby. I think part of their success is the fact that, you know, who are their biggest recruiting rivals, like Kentucky for players. I mean, who else do they really battle?
That's a really good point, Manny. Maybe we should team up on this.
Yeah,
but I think that it's possible that Cincinnati is, and I guess Group of 5 is going to the wayside now, but is the only or one of the few, because I don't even think Houston goes head to head with the big dogs in Texas very often for players. Cincinnati is the only Group of 5 school that I can think of off the top of my head that has recruiting rivals in the Power 5. Mm-hmm. Like they are routinely going against Purdue in Kentucky and like not so much Ohio State, but you know, the middle tier Big Ten programs in Cincinnati are kind of after the same crop of kids.
And I would say, and I would say what helps them is the fact that none of those are national championship winning programs. So, I mean, you can kind of, you don't have to, I don't want to say you don't have to fight that hard, but you certainly don't have the same fight. Like if you're going up against, you know, the teams in the South.
Yeah. Beating Kentucky is not the same thing as beating Florida.
No.
But they also, for their level and their conference, like beating Purdue was like huge. You know, they had the best, most talented roster in the American, and they went to the playoff because of it. So,
right.
Yeah, geographically they might be in a pretty advantageous spot, but like also Houston, I was shocked when I went back and looked at Houston's recruiting numbers because like they're not very good in comparison to like, what you would expect based on what city they're in.
I think that is one of the bigger.
But they're also very good most of the time, or not. They're never really bad. Let's put it that way. And
well, I just think there's so much talent in that area too that, you know, you can kind of have second and third tiered guys come out of that Houston area and the elite guys go to the Texas A&Ms and Texas of the world and still survive. I don't know if there's that same talent base in Ohio.
Houston's like finishing like in the 70s and 80s in the recruiting rankings every year. Like they're not even, you're right. Like maybe the 5th tier kid in Houston's better than the 5th tier kid in Cleveland. You know, that's correct. But you know, they're not winning any battles whatsoever against any of the Power 5 schools in Texas, and they're getting all the leftovers. And there's a lot there, but like finishing 77 in the rankings and then having undefeated seasons under 2 different head coaches, I think is a really interesting situation.
Yeah, and one thing about with schools that don't recruit at an elite level, when you get that breakthrough recruit, it's got to pan out. I just happened to we're doing something on quarterback positions. It's running next week, kind of updating every Power 5 program, like where they're at because of all the transfer portal stuff. And Justin Williams wrote the little blurb for Cincinnati. And I remember it was Evan Prater, the number 1, I think the highest rated recruit in school history is a quarterback. I think he's in his 3rd year in the program, maybe 4th. Is not projected to be the starter. It's like, I know Cincinnati's been good, but when you get a kid like that, a hometown kid you really, really run him to be good. And if he never breaks through, it's kind of a bummer. It doesn't mean they can't be good. I just always remember when he committed how big of a deal it was, and he might not ever start there. UCF.
Yeah, meanwhile, they're replacing a guy who's a starting quarterback in the NFL too.
Yeah,
2 years ago.
UCF number 44 right now with only 4 commits. Last year they were number 50. BYU number 55, 66 overall last year. Houston number 87 so far with only 1 commit. BYU is fascinating to me. Like going into this, I didn't think the move to the Big 12 would raise their recruiting profile much because they're unique. They've got their niche, and I don't. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they will recruit better. But what's your guys' opinion on BYU? Will this raise their profile at all?
I mean, I would think so. I would think in some capacity there'll be more kids who want to consider them, at least top 500 type kids. But their whole thing with all the Mormons and having to go on missions and stuff, that makes it so challenging in its own right that I'm curious how big of an effect it'll really have. I mean, they may get a couple more, but
I think that it's possible that BYU is impacted the least of the 4, because they're already in that pool of kids. Because I didn't realize, but I can't remember what the percentage is, but the vast majority of players on BYU's roster are Mormon. Yeah. So it's even if BYU's profile increases because they're in the Big 12, it's not like they're going to be better off recruiting Houston now or new places. They're going to try to find the Mormon kids that fit into their culture. And the thing that is most important about BYU is that when you go to BYU, you have to be okay with the cultural differences that exist there. Probably more so, you always talk about Notre Dame, right? Notre Dame is culturally different. You have to want to go to a private Catholic college to enjoy the Notre Dame experience, and you have to assimilate and accept and maybe even just kind of embrace what that means, what the student experience is there. The student experience at BYU is much, much different than what you would expect from any other place. And that automatically closes the door on 99.9% of the players who aren't of Mormon faith. So the whole profile thing with BYU is interesting because they only have a certain pool that they can choose from. And that pool is the same size regardless of what conference that school's in. Maybe they're more likely to get a Mormon kid who went to Utah or something instead, which could help. But over the course of the rankings, I don't think that all of a sudden BYU is going to jump up to 39 because they're in the Big 12. I mean, they have major fences to clear with every kid that goes there, and that fence has to probably begin and start and end with, are you Mormon and do you want to be a part of this culture, the student experience?
Yeah, no doubt. You ready for a little trivia?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
it is specific, sort of what we were talking about earlier.
About BYU or Twins?
Both. Yes. BYU has had 17 sets of twins in the last 100 years. Ari, name them all. I just made that up. That's not the question.
Did Algier have a twin?
8 programs have not had a class ranked outside of the top 20 in the last 10 cycles. So 8 programs, top 20, 10 years in a row.
Is this going to be easy?
Bama and Georgia right off the bat.
Good job, Manny.
Yeah.
You're a stud.
Manny's done the heavy lifting. Yeah, you guys.
Ohio State, right?
You done now?
You guys had to the rest.
Manny, is this your 25 years of covering college football that led you to that answer?
Yes, that's what it is.
I will be interested, if there is a weird one in here, because it's okay. So we have Alabama, Georgia, and Ohio State. That's 3 of the 8.
What's the timeline?
Right? Last 10 classes. Years. It's 23 back to 14.
Is Clemson in there?
Clemson is.
They are?
Yeah.
I thought they had an 11 spot in there somewhere.
Top 20.
Oh, it's top 20. Yeah. Okay, then Clemson is in there. Okay, so that's 4. Yeah. Texas has to be in there, right?
I don't think so. I think they had
they had a 21, I believe. I don't have the numbers in front of me.
Okay, now USC, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Absolutely. Okay, that's 5.
Florida.
No. Nope.
Miami.
Nope.
What? I'm scared to say Michigan.
You should be.
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M. Yes.
That's 5.
Oregon?
Nope.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Michigan? Nope.
Grace just said
I
Michigan.
I know. That's why I said nope. I realized.
Yeah. One of them is pretty obvious.
Penn State?
Nope.
Holy shit, this is harder than
Wait,
I thought. One's obvious.
how many do we have?
You have
Oh,
8.
LSU has to
Yes,
be one of them.
yes.
LSU.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
Did we say
So
Notre
six.
Dame?
Is that
Notre
6?
Dame.
Notre Dame is 7.
That's it.
That's it.
You guys got
You
it.
didn't get
Alabama,
it.
Clemson, Georgia, LSU, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and Texas A&M.
Wait, so you're telling me that UCLA is not on this list?
No.
Okay.
6 more. Okay, you ready for part 2?
Yeah,
6
part 2.
more can be included if we bump it up to top 25 classes over the last 10 years.
Michigan.
Texas has
Texas.
to be there.
Texas is in there.
Florida.
Yeah, yes.
Miami.
Nope.
We were 26th.
Boise State.
Are you even trying to get this right?
I was just joking.
Florida
Penn
State.
Florida State. So we've got Florida, Florida State, and Texas.
And not Miami.
What'd you just say, Grace?
Penn State.
Yes, Penn State. So there's 2 more.
There's not Miami.
No.
Miami had a couple bad years.
Miami or Miami of Ohio. Neither of them.
You're cracking me up, Ari.
I can't believe what did Miami finish 97th one year or something that I'm not
I
remembering.
think like 33rd
Yeah.
the year.
'Cause I know that USC had one that rated
No, they had 2. USC was like
973.
74 and like 60.
USC was lower than Old Dominion that one year, I think.
Ricky Ronnie getting it done on the trail.
How about
How many
North
do we have?
Carolina?
Nope.
Tennessee.
Tennessee.
Good
Good
job,
job,
Grace.
One
You
more.
should be on the Tennessee beat.
Move again.
One more.
One more.
Yeah.
Auburn.
Good job, Ari. I'm proud of you, buddy.
Good
Yes.
job,
There you go.
Ari.
Yes.
So I have a question for you guys, not about recruiting. Ari, you're kind of a feet guy, right? You've had
I love
manicures,
feet.
pedicures.
Oh,
How
you
much-
mean my feet?
Yeah, like
Oh, I thought you meant am I attracted physically to feet?
yeah. So Zoe asked me, she's graduating college this week. She asked me if she
This
calls
is
me,
a big
goes,
deal for me, by the
She
way.
goes,
I
"Are
don't
you-"
know if you know this.
what? What the
Is she
feet?
trying to
I'm
make 6 figures showing her feet? Because she could.
I'm me and my wife have this thing, and ever
Just
since
hijack
that
the conversation.
person. Okay, go ahead. Well,
No,
I
no, I
bring
wouldn't
up
hear
feet.
about-
I get excited.
Yeah,
I
I know.
know.
So she said, "Are you paying for my pedicure? Are you getting my toes done or whatever they call it? Or am I?" I was like, "How much are we talking about?" I had no
60
idea
bucks.
it was so expensive.
Oh yeah.
60, 70 bucks, depending
Yeah,
on if you
50
get a
bucks.
massage.
$70.
Oh, 70. I feel
Well,
like
she's
high.
getting the deluxe package. She's taking you to the cleaners, pal.
Well, I told
Yeah.
her,
Okay.
I said-
she's getting a massage in there too.
I said, I did my part. We provided the toenails. You have to pay to get them decorated. So I told her that we just go ahead and do it. And if she's nice to me, we'll split it. And then she said, "Thanks, champ," and hung up. So she calls me champ now.
Not a good sign for you there, Mitch.
Doesn't she have a job?
No, well, she's moving to Madrid and going to be a
Stop.
teacher.
Thanks,
She's moving to
champ.
Madrid.
Yeah, you knew that, right?
Yeah, I thought she was going there. I didn't know she was
For 2 years,
getting
a
a
year, or
new.
two. A year or two.
That's a long time.
Yeah.
She's gonna marry somebody there.
I just want to be invited.
She's gonna fall in love with somebody there, and you're gonna have to be prepared for that.
Yeah. So there's a
That's
father.
what happened to my mom. My dad did a foreign exchange student thing and
Really?
went to Israel and met my mom and yanked her from her family.
Is that source of? Is that like source of?
I mean, I met
her family.
my cousins 3 total times in my entire life. Half of my family lives across the world.
Imagine growing up in Israel, not being a quarterback, then coming here and finding out and meeting Ari and he's your cousin. Like,
Well,
it's like are all Americans like that?
Imagine meeting
Art-
Ari as your cousin for the first time.
Ari doesn't realize he's related to the Merdingers. That's
Yes.
Yeah,
that's
Merlinger's
my-
my cousin. Merlinger.
Yeah, you got quarterback in your blood.
Are we gonna go back to talking about feet, or are we done?
Yeah. So okay, no, let's go back to your.
I think Brett has really cute feet, and that we should exploit that for money on the internet.
You
Does
can make a
does
lot of
she-
money.
Does she believe this?
She knows she has cute feet, but she's not on board. I wanted to create a feet finder profile for her. It's been kind of an inside
Only
joke with me and Grace
feet.com.
because
Yeah.
somebody am I allowed to say this? Somebody DM'd Grace on Twitter randomly and asked her for a picture of her feet, and then we found this thing on Instagram. About this
Is that how
chick
you met
that makes
Hunt, Grace?
$350,000. She makes
Yeah, I forgot to tell you, Ari, it
$350,000.
was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, this girl on Instagram, literally, yes. I sent it to Ari last week. The guy goes up to her and is like, "How much money do you make?" And she was like, $350,000. And he was like, "What do you do?" And she was like, "I post photos of my feet on the internet."
Wow. We're in the wrong profession, folks.
I know.
I'm just saying, like, if we could just pick up an extra $50K a year, I'll take the photos. I'll edit them. Their feet.
5-star feet.
5-star feet. There you go. There's
That's your site right there. 5starfeet.com.
5-star feet.
the podcast. Feet matter.
I just like, I want to be like at the top of the chain and like managing like 100 people who have feet profiles and take 10% from everyone.
Is that a Ponzi scheme?
No, because there's actual value there. People, these are marketable things.
We are traveling down a road where we should probably stop. So
HR is about to be like,
yeah. Ari, you excited to see us all next week?
I am.
That wasn't very genuine.
I'm very excited.
Okay.
I have to finish all these stories before we go though, so I'm kind of under a little bit of pressure.
Okay, well then we can leave. Do your thing, Ari.
I gotta go return a rental car now.
That's not what I meant by do your thing.
Oh. Thank you for listening to Stars Matter. We will catch you guys next week.